All right. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another Curator Masterclass. I'm incredibly excited to have my friend and co-author of Exactly What to Say for Real Estate joining me today to talk about how to have the most difficult and critical and common conversations in real estate, how to do it well, how to navigate the changing environment that we're all dealing with right now, and really how to overcome some of the what I think are the most common things you're experiencing right now. It's funny, Phil, before today's call, what I was doing, I was going back and looking at some of the challenges agents were having in their marketing and their sales process. And almost every single concern or complaint that I was hearing was agents talking about how there was a lack of inventory. And what it feels like overnight, inventory has returned. And now everyone is concerned about there being too much inventory or the fact that sellers aren't going to be getting the same prices they were getting from 6 months ago, or the fact that the cost of capital is increasing. So what I find really interesting about us having this conversation right now, Phil, is the fact that I think today agents are realizing how much more difficult it is for them to navigate this changing environment than it maybe was 6 months ago. In the past, it was all about inventory. Now we have rising rates, we have inventory hitting the market, we have inflation, and it feels like a lot of people are losing control of the game here. So I'd like to kick today's call off with maybe just getting your perspective on the market. You're intimately involved in real estate. You're seeing what's happening every day. You're talking to agents. What are you seeing out there in the real estate market that's maybe jumping out to you?
I think if I'm to say the thing that jumps out to me the most is just how much responsibility the agents have on shaping the market. I think actually the agents' voices are more of the market than the market itself.
Yeah.
So i.e., whether it's confidence or fear, whether it's confusion or clarity, whatever is being articulated to buyers and sellers within a local market, primarily by agents, is dictating more of market conditions than market conditions. Like they're the conductor of the orchestra. And whether this is, I think what they often miss is when does the story need to change? Because if you're conducting an orchestra, directing a play, if you are responsible for leading any form of thought or group of people, you got to do it in time with the music. And what we're experiencing now in the real estate market is people have got the overspill of the echo of yesterday's story bleeding into today's reality, and nobody knows how to punctuate. And by nobody, I mean not enough people know how to punctuate. So the lines are very blurred. Is this a strong seller's market? Is this a strong buyer's market? Is this the right time to buy? Is this the right time to sell? Who knows? And it's looking for thought leadership to say, here's what to be able to do. And how do you process and articulate the truth in this current scenario so people can feel smart, capable, and good, to quote Tamsin Webster. And that also tells me there's never been a more important time to have an experienced agent, which for the 122 people I know listening in here right now and here live with us this is professional real estate agents deciding that ahead of time our ability to articulate complex critical conversations is going to be the difference between us coming first or second, knowing how well second place pays in this business, right? It doesn't pay well. So the chaos is real. Creating clarity in that chaos is what agents are responsible for. And let's remember, we were in chaos just 12, 18, 24 months ago.
Yeah. I'm going to tweet that, creating, and I'm not going to give you credit for it, but I'm going to tweet it, which is creating clarity in chaos. That is sort of I think the essence of what is your job right now. Because I think what we're going to be diving into is, I think a lot of these conversations, I was thinking about as I was preparing some of this before the call, these are hard questions to answer.
Yep.
These are not, I think the old, tired.
They should be hard questions to answer. Like a real estate agent is responsible for helping families navigate one of the most complex, difficult, important financial transactions in their lifetime. Why should it be easy?
Yeah. Well, I think it's what's interesting, and I agree with what you said. It's the job is hard. It should be hard. That's why we get paid money. That's why websites can't replace us. but I think it's what's even more challenging is that it's even more individualized. And what I mean by that is that maybe in the past, if you were to look at 18 months ago, as an example, when the cost of capital was under 3% for a 30-year mortgage, home values were on the rise, you could give general advice and kind of be right. You know what I'm saying? Like you can kind of like, hey, it actually is a good time to buy it. Home values have increased somewhat significantly over the last 12 months. It is a good time to sell. So the generic advice kind of got you at least into the conversation and probably was in some ways right. Now, general advice feels dangerous. It feels
very
misleading, right?
It's dangerous. It is in fact almost certainly wrong.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Any general advice you can deliver today, you're probably not going to step towards clarity.
Yeah. Yeah. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to throw a couple of the most common questions that I'm seeing that I've gathered that agents are asking. But before I do, I just want to just get some engagement here from the audience. We got now over 140 people joining us live. And this will be recorded. And I'm going to go ahead and make sure it is recorded. It is recorded. This call will be recorded. So we'll upload it afterwards. But let's start with, for the audience here, what are the most challenging questions you're having to face today? What are those questions that you're facing today? I want you to drop them in the chat, because if we have an opportunity, we'll try to get to those throughout today's masterclass. So let's start with the obvious one, Phil. And this actually comes from a Facebook mastermind group. This is the the tech support group. It says the question is it a good time to buy? So let's maybe get a little bit of insight into how you might navigate that question. So people are wondering, mortgage rates are increasing, inflation is through the roof, sellers are still kind of unrealistic about how much their homes are worth. Is it a good time to buy, Phil? How would you navigate that question?
I think the answer to that question is not yours to answer.
Okay.
The questions you should ask of the person asking that question is what's going to help them reach about clarity. Because what they're really saying is it a good time for me to buy? Mm-hmm. They're not asking, is it a good time to buy? They're asking, is it a good time for me to buy?
Yeah.
So what would I do? I'd write a question tree. What would my question tree look like? It would look something along the lines of, okay, well, like, to help you find the answer to that question for you, well, let's look at a couple of questions. Firstly is, do you think real estate is going to be worth more or less in 10 years' time?
Mm-hmm. I might say, well, yeah, I think it's probably going to be worth at least the same, but probably more.
Okay. The house that you're thinking about buying, are you looking to stay in that for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? Is this a 6-month decision or a long-term decision?
Where we're at right now, my kids are just getting into school. We're going to be stuck here until at least high school. So probably at least 7, 8 years. Okay.
Can you afford to buy it today?
That's getting harder.
Okay. Is it going to get harder or easier moving forward?
No. That's what I don't know. And I think if I'm being honest, I don't see it getting easier. I don't see inflation dropping. I don't see mortgage rates dropping again. So I feel like it's like this is kind of the new normal, if you will.
Okay. So let's just face some facts. Is you think the property is going to be worth more in the future than it is today? Mm-hmm. You plan on staying there for a long time. You can afford to buy today, and you're not sure if you're going to be able to afford tomorrow.
That's right.
So explain to me why you wouldn't buy.
And so what are you doing in that last question? When you throw it back to them, when you say, explain to me why in this scenario, because obviously we know that why question can come off as confrontational, it can come off as getting like, give us a little bit of the behind the scenes, why you're asking that question.
Try to find what the real barrier is here, right? Because often the barrier isn't the barrier they're presenting. Often the barrier is they're having struggled to process a complex set of thoughts, and they haven't had somebody distill down what the series of questions are that they need to be able to answer to have confidence in their conviction. What they're looking to be able to do, and I think we all have to remember this, is they're looking to feel competent in their actions when at the bar chatting to friends, when speaking to colleagues, when chatting with family members and spouse, that they want to be able to, when mum says, "You're buying in this market? Are you crazy?" They want to be able to say, "Yes, I am, and here's why," and feel good about their response. So you've got to get them to that kind of position. Why do I finish on that? Like, explain to me why you wouldn't buy right now. Is I'm looking to get to the real fear. What is the real thing that is standing in their way? Well, well, I mean, the market, it could crash next week. Okay. Do you think it's going to crash next week? No, I don't. So yes, we could be hit by a meteor like tomorrow. We could be attacked by aliens. These things are all possible too. But does that mean that you're building a nuclear bunker, trying to go underground and save your family, or are you living life as normal? Well, I'm living life as normal. Okay. So come on, like, why should we not do this? Let's build the argument for not. Because if success in selling is all about destroying the option of no rather than embellishing the option of yes, here's the time to prove it. Yeah. Like let's ask the questions to be able to let's destroy every reason why you should stay where you are. So now let's look at it. So you're renting right now, and you're fearful about getting into the house buy market because the market might crash. Okay. So you're renting right now. What do you think is going to happen to rental prices over the next couple of years? Going up or down?
Yeah, rental. Well, we're seeing it, right? Rents are rising almost at a fast, almost in parallel to with how rates are rising, especially in most major cities and suburbs. And it's becoming less and less options available. So it's even less inventory available in the rental market, and prices are increasing.
Okay. So what you've got two choices there, right? You're either going to pay your own mortgage or you're going to pay somebody else's mortgage. Which one of those seems like the smarter option?
So I'm gonna pause for a second, because I think I want to talk about maybe the delivery of uncomfortable news. Because this is one of the things I think of people, and this is where I really want you to drill down for us, Phil, because this is where I think people screw this up. Because I've heard that line before, which is you're either paying your own mortgage or someone else's mortgage, but you're paying a mortgage. Right. And I think I'm trying to imagine if I'm sitting across the room from an agent, and I'm thinking about buying, and the person says, "Well, Jimmy, you're paying someone's mortgage. You're either paying your landlord's mortgage or your mortgage." If the delivery of that is wrong, the relationship is shattered, right? Because that puts me in a really defensive position. Like, obviously, I know that I'm not an idiot. So talk about the delivery of like uncomfortable facts.
A punchline is funny in a joke because of the setup. So if you're going to deliver a punchline, which I would class that as from a really direct question, you have to have done the dance in setup to get to the ability to earn the right to be able to ask that question. If you ask that question too early, you're out of sync, you're rude, you're obnoxious, you're all the things you don't want to be. Yeah. So all we have to do is we have to build the case of evidence ahead of time around their beliefs. Property prices are going up, like build that whole context that says, I now understand exactly where you're at. So you're renting right now. You think your rent is going to be going up in the years to be able to come. You can afford to be able to buy today. You think your house is going to be worth more in the future. You're planning to be able to stay in the thing you're going to buy for the foreseeable future. Yeah. I've gathered all this evidence to me to be able to say, so look, here's where we're at right now. We got a couple of options. You're either going to move forward with a mortgage, or you're going to stay where you are paying somebody else's mortgage. Which one of those sounds like the smartest of options? Yeah. Now what I can get them to be able to do is to say, well, okay, now you put it that way, I guess buying is a reasonable idea. Here's where we go slow again. Well, here's how you get to be able to play smarter in this market. What you're saying is you want to buy, but you want to buy well. Yeah, I want to buy, and I want to buy well. It's not this gateway decision of should I buy or should I stay. It's now, how do I buy? You create a gray space, which is a play space, which is a safe space in how do you go about buying? Well, now, you're looking to buy a fixer-upper to add some value to over this period of time, because in this market, there's a good opportunity to buy stuff that needs work because people aren't putting the money into the property ahead of time because of fear of what it could be. So you get a chance to be able to buy into future equity. by being able to add value to real estate over time, we're back to those talk tracks again.
Yeah.
Is what you could look to be able to do is you could take advantage of people who have put money into things, expecting it to be able to return quickly, that got themselves highly geared, that now need to be able to get out of that quickly, and we could be a bit more aggressive on the pricing.
Mm-hmm.
So, are we deciding that what we're going to look to be able to do is look to buy in this market, or are you deciding that you're going to cross your fingers and hope that property is randomly going to be cheaper in the future?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And in this particular case, what's jumping out to me is you said it earlier, and I'm going to repeat it, but effectively you're sort of eliminating you're sort of and in some ways through these series of questions, you're trying to sort of, if you believe it to be true, trying to get the consumer to understand that their current state of waiting or indecisiveness is probably the riskiest thing they can do. Correct. And it isn't to say that they have to move, but being indecisive is expensive. And
look what could happen with these questions is I categorically believe that real estate is an overinflated market. It is going to be worth less over the next decade. Nobody's going to buy homes in the future. Everybody's going to rent. That's the direction we're going in. Home ownership is a stupid idea. Interest rates are going to crash again. Money is going to be cheap. And by the way, if we're buying something today, I want to move on in 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
If we find that out, like, run for the hills quick.
Yeah.
Get the heck out of that conversation and go work with somebody who is invested in the idea that home ownership is a good idea.
This is such an important point, because I think this is something that you taught me, and just being able to work with you over the years, Phil, is the moment you realize you get to choose your customers, you take back control.
Right.
And I think in this context, I think a lot of agents are so fearful of saying no to a potential client. They don't understand or maybe internalize the cost of having a bad client, the time that you have to invest in supporting that client, the unlikelihood that they're actually going to close. These are all things that become, in a lot of ways, just detrimental to the overall sanity of you as a business owner. Mm-hmm. Let me drill down here on a general topic before we get to specific questions. When you think about, when I reflect on the last 18 months, and certainly when I look forward to the next 18 months, I'm always reminded of the Warren Buffett quote, like, be greedy when others are fearful, and be fearful when others are greedy. And I'm paraphrasing there, but I think it's a general quote there. I think that is much harder to do in reality, and it's much easier just to say out loud. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people right now are liquidating their portfolios because the market's crashing. I think a lot of people are cutting back on spending because inflation's through the roof. I think a lot of people right now who are sellers who are now kind of rushing to sell because they feel like they've missed the peak, and they want to kind of get that last little bit of kind of equity they gained over the last few years. How do you think about providing a sense of calmness and clarity in a world that feels like it's just being pushed in chaos? Like, it feels like, if you read the headlines, Phil, it feels like the window is closing, and everyone is just trying to run out at the exact same time. And agents aren't helping that with what they're sharing on social media and what they're promoting. The media certainly isn't helping that. So when you think about having conversations during times of chaos, do you have any particular a technique or approach you might take, just generally speaking, as it relates to that scenario?
Hyper curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
And give as little advice as possible until you reach a position of certainty. So when everybody else is panicking, your job is to question reality calmly.
Mm-hmm.
And in this real estate market, I think one of the most important facts that we forget is we live in a country with a global housing crisis.
Mm-hmm.
We have a nation that is underpinned by the housing market. Like, on our money here in the US, it says "In God We Trust," which is also linked towards, well, it should be really "In housing we trust." Mm-hmm. Everything is linked back to lending, that is linked back towards housing in some way, shape, or form is we as a nation have pinned our tail to the mast of the fact that the housing market is what we're all banking our future on.
Mm-hmm.
In some ways, that people want homes, banks lend against homes, that creates the financial markets. Like it's all interlinked. So the influx of additional cash into the economy,
Mm-hmm.
everybody is hedging on the fact that that then finds itself into property prices, because everybody wins when like the value of US property is now more than what it was a while ago.
Mm-hmm.
That there are no losers to that argument other than people who aren't in the game yet. And there are enough people in the game that want to hold up that game.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I think, we have to have a belief that we believe in housing, mm-hmm. and we believe in home ownership. Mm-hmm. That is the first belief that you've got to get to an acceptance on, is that collectively, we believe that home ownership is something that most people are going to want at some point in their life.
Yeah.
We believe in the principle of home ownership on an individual level. If we can get to that point as a consensus of understanding, we can then build off of it.
Yeah. And just to give some data behind that, there's an economist that put out some information about the last 40 years of home value appreciation. And what they found was 168 of the 188 financial quarters, home values appreciated. And the only time where it depreciated, on average, it was less than 1%. So even outside of the sort of late 07, 08, 09 global financial crisis caused by the housing market crash, there was only a handful of quarters, maybe 4 to 6, that were actually home values were basically home value appreciation was under 0%, so negative was under 1%. And so what you said there that I think is really important is, as agents, you do have to believe. It's like sort of believing your own product here. You do have to believe in the principles of home ownership. Correct. If you don't believe that, then it's going to be a hard sell for a consumer. So calmness, hyper curiosity, until you reach a level of certainty. And what you're looking for is, and one of the things you touched on earlier that I just want to double click on, is understanding their time horizon. Because I think we can't predict the future, but if we were to look at the past, so long as our time horizon is reasonable, it is reasonable advice to say that buying makes sense, depending on their time horizon.
You should be able to reach a reasonable conclusion with the majority of people that buying makes sense. Not it's the right advice, because once you can agree to some key principles about the fact that we believe in home ownership and that we believe that housing is going to go up at some period of time, and that your move is not a 5-minute move, it's a certainly long-term move. Yeah. We can then start to get towards not what's the right thing to do for the market, but what's the right thing to do for your personal market conditions. Mm-hmm. And what you can now start to look at is some worst case scenarios.
Yeah.
So if you're brave enough to be able to say, like, if you want to do something risky, the biggest thing that can give you confidence in a risky decision is stare the monster in the face and let's look at how bad could be. Mm-hmm. So let's say hypothetically you buy this home at $800,000 today.
Yeah.
And you're doing this with 20% down. So you're putting 160 grand down and you're going to mortgage the rest. But you're going to stay here for a minimum of 5 years. What's your plan over that 5-year period of time? Are you going to do a 30-year fixed rate? Are you going to just service the interest? Are you looking to be able to pay some of that equity down? Are you going to be aggressive with overpayments? What's your game plan?
Yeah, to be able to afford the home, I'm looking to get the best rate. I'm not going to be here forever. So I'll probably do an adjustable rate mortgage, like a 5-year adjustable rate mortgage.
Okay. And are you going to look to be able to, pay more than you need to try and hammer some of that equity down as well?
I'm just going to try to yes, a little bit, but I'm just going to focus on affording the payment. I guess that's my big thing. Okay. I want to get out of renting and buy a house.
Okay. And if you are to then move on from here in 5 years' time, do you want to move to something smaller or bigger? Just hypothetically speaking.
Hypothetically, smaller. Yeah. Okay.
So you'll live in this, and then you'd perhaps downsize the other side once the kids are out of home or any of those kind of things.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, okay. That's right.
So here's the good news, is if the market goes up over that period of time, then you've grown equity and you're in a position to be able to perhaps pull all of that equity out, go pay cash for the smaller property. There's the good news. That's highly probable. And let's look at worst case scenario. Let's say that your property goes down over that period of time. It goes down, it's only worth $700,000 when you want to be able to get out of it. Well, instead of paying the same sum of money right now that you're paying in rental, you've got now 80 grand in your pocket to be able to go enter into the housing market, but the entire housing market has softened across the board, and that you're buying something less than 400, you're buying at 250.
Mm-hmm.
So the way I look at it is, providing you're going to stay here 5-10 years, you're better off buying this home than renting this home, renting where you're at right now, regardless of what happens in the market.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What I wrote this down. Let's look at how bad can be. I think I tweeted this recently. I think agents have a tendency, Phil, to tell the market how interesting it is, how funny it is, how smart it is. We try to basically bolster the market as if the market has feelings, and what consumers are really looking for.
It has feelings.
Right? The market doesn't have feelings. What the consumers are looking for is they're looking for, I think, an honest and sober view of where the world is headed. And what I love about this idea is about analyzing risk, because I think this is maybe one of the parts of the conversation that agents, if I'm listening right now, I'm writing this down. Is if you play out that scenario, what's the worst case scenario? And you really go to the extreme. Now there's at least some guardrails. There's a range, right? Because the worst case scenario isn't bankruptcy or foreclosure or going to zero. It's probably just losing a little bit of money over the course of a long period of time. And they should be used to that by now.
Guaranteed to do anyway. There is a cost of living, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so that to me is a really interesting way of helping people get to a position of confidence so they can make a decision. Because again, I do think indecision is expensive.
But you can go even further with that same example, right? What do they say? Like, what if we're back to 2008 levels? What if we get to the point of, and what is the reality, right? Is 80-20 borrowing with carrying a heavy note is how 60, 70, 80% of homes in America are currently under ownership.
Yeah.
If that equity position moves to negative equity across the board, what's the reality of that?
Yeah, and if you're saying people start becoming upside down on their mortgage, well,
but I'm talking about 2/3 of the country being upside down, because that's what would need to happen, right?
Yeah, well, I think the same thing would happen, which happened in 2007, 2008, 2009, is the government would step in and provide relief, right?
They'd have to.
Because there's no other choice at that point. You can't let everyone go into foreclosure. Obviously, there would be a part of the industry or part of the market that would be adversely affected. But what's actually really interesting as you walk through that scenario is the percentage of consumers who are equity rich is at all-time high, meaning that the percentage of the home value and how much they actually owe on it is over 50%. There is so much more equity in properties today than there was in 2007, 2008. And in addition to that, we mentioned earlier adjustable rate mortgages. I saw a stat this morning, Phil, that right now, adjustable rate mortgages, which were a tiny, tiny, tiny percentage of mortgages in the last 24 months, now account for 8% of all mortgages. Well, during the 2007, 2008, 2009 housing crisis, they were nearly 40%. So there are many scenarios in which the market is very different. And so my question, I want to come back to the questions here. And the question I have for you, Phil, is when will the housing market crash?
Well, how can it? And like Wendy put a comment here in the chat, is like, unless lending practice changed drastically, that should not happen to that degree again, right? Like is the run of events that came together towards 2008's market crash happening, are almost impossible to be able to recreate. And if that outcome was to happen again, in my mind, we're living in an apocalypse. So the last thing you're worried about is your house value. Like, we got other problems to deal with.
Well, in this, but this is maybe the difference between what you and I understand and what everyone on this call understands, but the perception of consumers, which is when things are going up, everyone thinks they're going to be going up forever. When they're going down, they think we're going to be down forever. So when presented with the question or even the objection of not making a move, they say, we're gonna wait until the market crashes. Maybe they don't even use the word crash. Maybe they use the word corrects, right? The sort of the right, just 1 degree over from crash, correct. When you're presented with that, call it objection. And let's say they believe that the market is, they've been talking to all their buddies, oh, there's no way the housing can continue to increase, it's going to crash, hang in there. How might you approach that? How might you might navigate that? So they come to you and say, Phil, I want to sell my house. I realize I'm probably past the peak, but I'm going to be buying as well. So I figured I'm going to wait until the market crashes, then I'll sell my house, and then I'll be able to go out and buy something on the cheap.
Gotcha. I think that's a smart way to be able to do things for starters. Are you guys looking online right now at stuff that's coming up?
Yeah, we're on Zillow listing alerts, so we get the alerts anytime a new home hits the market.
Okay. And how many things have you seen whilst looking that you might want to move forward with?
There's been, I think sellers are a little bit unrealistic right now. There's been a few properties that we would consider. The prices seem to be kind of too high, but yeah, we're seeing more than we did 6 months ago.
Okay. And when good stuff shows up, how long do you see it hanging around on the market?
Right now, it's the good stuff, priced right. It's still moving, right? It's usually under a week or two.
Okay. And if something was to come up that you would like, would you be in a position to be able to buy that before you've sold this?
Probably not. We probably would have to, we want to put a large down payment down. We don't want to finance a whole lot of it. So we would probably have to sell the house, sell the house first. Once you found the right home, sell the house first, and then put it on.
Got it. So you're looking at homes hypothetically, you see some things you like, you want to be able to move on that when the market is right in your terms, and you're going to need to have this sold in order to be able to make that decision when the time is right.
Yeah, that's right.
And what's going to need to happen in the market for you to have confidence that it feels like the right time to be making offers? What's the trigger in your head? Because I know it's different things for different people.
Yeah, I think for me, it's I think it's more about the property than the market, in the sense that the right property priced at the right price. I feel like that's the only thing that's holding us back from making a move.
Okay. And to move on that, you're going to need this sold.
Yeah, that's right.
And you're not listing it now?
And so when you ask that question, right?
Yeah.
You're trying to get them to do what? Realize how dumb it is to try to time the market and then quickly move.
I'm realizing it that I'm getting them to realize that they're in the right time now.
Mm-hmm.
Because actually what you want them to realize is that now is the right time, not tomorrow and not yesterday. If they think it was yesterday, they're going to have a grieving period. If they think it's tomorrow, they're going to keep waiting. So what you want them to realize is actually, we just hit the point of bounce right now. So what you're saying is you need to sell to be able to buy. Houses are moving still relatively quickly. I need cash in pocket, or I need to be under contract to have the confidence to going into market.
Yeah.
My house is still in a strong position where it could sell for the right price in the right way right now. So if I want to do some form of simultaneous exchange or tie these transactions together, or at least tie the time window together in some way, I want to move in the same market.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I'm tracking. What's interesting is you're going through this.
David asked a question here in the chat, which I think is really relevant. This is, when does data come into the conversation?
Yeah.
And my answer to that is as late as possible. Because the second I start saying, well, the data says here, now what we did is we just create a third negotiator in this room that can't answer back, that is easy for us to be able to defer a decision towards. So if what you're doing is you're abdicating the responsibility of this decision to historic or hypothetical data, we didn't create clarity, we create confusion.
Mm-hmm.
I would use the data to back up a decision once a decision has been made, to say, well, being as we've now suggested that this is the way to go, here's the data to reassure you that what you're doing is smart.
Yeah. One of the magic words we use in the book is most people. And it's a way to sort of instill confidence in people that they're not alone in making a decision.
Yep.
It's a way to provide them a sense of confidence in their decision, because it allows them to say, well, most people are probably smarter than me, so I'll probably just, move in that direction.
The other way.
Yeah. And it's what's interesting right now. And let's talk about a real challenging question, because this one I thought about, and I was sort of drawing a blank on how to maybe navigate this. Home affordability. If you were to buy the same house today, compared to, let's say, 12 months ago, that same house not only is going to cost you 20% more, maybe 15% more in terms of the actual sales price, but if you're financing it, I think roughly the number is the average American puts down about 12% for their mortgage. If you're financing it, the cost to live in that house could be as high as 40 to 60% higher. Yep. And so if you've been on the sidelines, just waiting, trying, putting in offers, you've been active. It's not like you've not been swinging for the fences here. You've been active. And every single quarter goes by, prices are increasing, but also now the cost of capital is increasing. Now we're at this point where every agent's celebrating that inventory is hitting the market. But even though the inventory is hitting the market, the home prices and the cost of capital have caused affordability to be 40 to 60% higher. How might you navigate that? Because I'm having a difficult time reconciling the reality that, yes, there are more options, and yes, you probably will be getting in less bidding wars, and yes, you probably are not going to have to come to the table with 15%, 20% above ask, but it comes with that mortgage you thought was $3,200 a month is now going to be $4,400 a month, $4,600 a month. How can you help provide a sense of calmness and clarity for the buyers who've just been getting beaten up in this market over the last 18 months? Because I think a lot of people who are listening right now, they got a whole book of business that falls in that category, Phil.
It's tough for starters. So let's not pretend that this is easy. A nice headline quote. I'd love some of you to firstly be able to just play with this on social media, right? The Dalai Lama once said, is the best time to plant a tree was 30 years ago. The second best time is today. I think we should have some Dalai Lama quotes about buying houses. You mocked up for social, but that's just me being silly. What we owe as a responsibility towards the buyers and sellers that we are representing is getting clear on their real goals that exist around home ownership. And by which I mean, like, do they actually want to own the home?
Mm-hmm.
Do they want to be at a point in life where they are without a mortgage payment, without a rent payment, where actually what they've managed to be able to do is to use home ownership for its primary purpose, which is to reduce overhead at a later point in life,
mm-hmm.
and then help them navigate the smarts around reaching that position of what financial freedom and future looks like in their world. And I think this old-fashioned set of questioning and this old-fashioned set of reality has been lost in favor of the fact of, we've got to get into the real estate market because here's where we're going to make money. And it is actually, home ownership is about controlling uncertain costs.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to hedge the market in any given way, cost of housing is probably the safest way that you can hedge any given form of market, because at least you're indexed to cost of living,
mm-hmm.
regardless of where cost of living is. So what I'd be looking to get into the conversation with is bigger, more longer term planning. This isn't about like, do you want 5 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and a garage and a driveway? It's like, let's just take a look at the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. What are you trying to do?
Mm-hmm.
And let's also then get into some of the other numbers, right? Okay, cost of borrowing is more expensive today than it was last year. It's less expensive than it was at other points of time in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Different. The most beautiful thing about living in this country is that it's a free market.
Mm-hmm.
Free market means things go up and things go down. That's what we get to be able to enjoy. And that movement allows us to create decisions within it to be able to surf and navigate that market. So we're just facing out some facts. Now, over the same time period, is what's happened to your income? Is your income gone up or down?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my income's gone up too.
Mm-hmm.
Also, now that you're working from home more and that what you'll need to be able to do is to have more home space to be able to work from, what's happened to your cost of commute?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's gone down. Let's just face this whole thing out. So actually what you have is you have an extra $800 a month or an extra $1,200 a month to be able to contribute towards your plan for home ownership.
Mm-hmm.
And what we can start to get to is working more closely with financial partners to be able to say, well, what does a 15-year term look like as opposed to a 30-year term? What does an overpayment look like towards getting you to a position of having predictable monthly expenses through the vehicle of home ownership? That might mean that, yes, you can get in today while it's still affordable today, etc. But how do you make sure that what you do is you end up owning a significant share of this property more so than you do at the start line?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like if somebody is only looking to be able to ride the equity gap and service the interest of the mortgage, now's not a good time to be able to buy.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's a less good time to buy than if your goal is absolute home ownership. Whereas the second you can get them towards, well, here's how I can afford to beat the banks, to beat interest rates, to mitigate the risk of interest rates going to, because if interest rates go to 9%, what happens to rents?
Yeah. They're gonna fall.
The only way that you can mitigate your risk against housing prices going crazy is own your home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So this back to this home ownership conversation and saying, like let's play a longer term discussion here and check that what you'd like to do is at some point in your life be without a rent check or a heavy mortgage payment.
Mm-hmm. There's a quote, Phil, I heard on Twitter, or I read on Twitter recently, which is a small admission is one of the best ways to build trust.
Mm-hmm.
And what I heard you just say there was when you're having these conversations, admitting that, yeah, it's expensive. There is no two ways about it. Homes have become less affordable, right? And number two, there are scenarios in which it's a terrible time. If you have to overextend yourself to get into a home, you shouldn't do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if all of a sudden you probably can't do it given the lending laws or lending requirements. But even if you could do it, if the stress of making your monthly payment is going to feel like a burden to you to the point where you're going to have anxiety about it, then it doesn't make a lot of sense to put yourself in that position for potentially a longer term investment. You got to get the other things in your life, got to get some balance where you can make that decision. So that small admission around, yes, it's unaffordable. There are times in which it doesn't make any sense to buy, and getting that out ahead of the conversation feels necessary to start from a level playing field. Am I tracking that? Like, it's almost like I'm not going to use your one-liner on you here, but it's like the show them that you know them moment feels like that should when you're having a tough conversation, that should be the first thing that happens. Tell me what I got right or what I got wrong there.
You're absolutely right on that. And this is back to the first point I made at the very start of our discussion today. Every buyer, every seller wants to win the game.
Mm-hmm.
But the game is ever changing. So our job is to be able to define what is the game we're looking to win today. Now, if you can get people to admit that the game we're looking to win is home ownership and controlling costs over a sustained period of time, we can decide how we want to flex a move. If the game we're looking to be able to play was to beat the other 17 people that were all bidding on this one house that's available right now, you taught them how to be able to win that game.
Mm-hmm.
Winning that game is a different playbook to winning the game of home ownership over a period of time. And the reason that house prices may well drop 10, 20%, like some of the headlines are, is because there has been a redistribution of how people have chose to live over the last 2 to 3 years.
Yeah.
So certain areas that were hot ticket 3 years ago are less hot ticket, and certain areas that were downtrodden have now come up. But the headline is, let's talk about the ones that have dropped pricing. And then similarly, look at things like, our mutual friend Chris Smith, right? Your business partner, our co-author, loves his sneakers, loves like the whole Nike trainers thing.
Yeah.
Is the price of sneakers hasn't significantly changed, but when there is scarcity in a market, people are prepared to pay more than market rates.
Yeah.
So you can easily talk about that drop, but when you actually look at marketable prices, yes, there's been some growth. But we just need to start getting into all these facts with people so people can actually start to understand the truism of what's really been going on over now, and get in the mess with them. I think that's probably the most important part of the conversations is, instead of trying to have an answer to the question, have questions for the questions to try and understand their circumstances and really insert yourself into the problem, getting clear on what the problem is you're trying to solve.
And what I'm hearing you say is, who is in control of the conversation?
The person asking the questions.
And I think in a lot of cases, the natural inclination is, especially when someone asks a question that you're facing very commonly, you immediately want to jump to the answer. When's the housing market going to crash? Oh, well, it's not like 2007, 2008, 2009 because A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right? When are home prices going to drop? Well, they're not going to drop, right? Because of A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right?
And also, every buyers and sellers motivations is different. I think the reminder towards this, right, is there are people in this market right now that have listed their home, crossing their fingers that they get a birthday prize for selling their home that they didn't really want to sell, but wanted to capitalize on that market. So they had unrealistic pricing expectations. There are also people in this market that 2020 decided to be able to take on a passion project, poured a load of money into it, and now hate where they live and desperate to be able to get out of it because they made a bad decision, right? Like, these individual motivators that could trigger somebody's ability to be able to say, will I sell this for 10% more than what it's worth or 10% less than what it's worth? They exist and always will exist.
I want to talk about my favorite topic, millennials. As you know, I'm a millennial. And I think technically you're a millennial.
I just scrape in depending upon whose definition you're with.
Yeah, they classify us as geriatric millennials. They've given us a new classification. But I'm gonna end with a really important question. A question I think that a lot of people are going to be facing right now because of the rise of inventory. But millennials make up the largest share of home buyers. They account, I think, for somewhere over 50%, if I'm not mistaken. Someone might be able to correct me in the chat there. Millennials have a lot to complain about. We are now entering, we've gone through we sort of came into the workforce into a recession. Most millennials started work in 2010. We're doing entry-level jobs. The market's been very good. Now the job market is sort of correcting a little bit. You're seeing layoffs across the board, especially in real estate. You're seeing every major company kind of, I don't know what the story is behind this. This is a quick sidebar. I don't know why everyone lays off 10% of their workforce. I'm not sure if they just stick their hand in a bucket and pull out a random number, but it seems like everyone chooses 10%. But you're seeing that with Redfin, with Compass, with Zillow certainly laid off a significant amount when they got out of the iBuyer program. I know a lot of people right now are working with millennials. And I have a general question around communicating with people who are of the same age, who are older and younger. Do you have any advice for those agents? Because the median age of a realtor is somewhere north of 55. Do you have any advice when it comes to agents when they're communicating to different generations? Does your style change? Does your approach change? Because I think a lot of agents right now who are watching, they were, for a long time, they were selling to people just like them, but now they're selling to people who are much younger than them. And I think it's just an interesting conversation to have around how you might approach that if you're an agent listening right now who's selling and working with millennials, given the fact that they are buying the most amount of houses in the US today.
Regardless of age of the person you're looking to be able to influence at any given point in time, what you need is clarity of two things. One is, what are they really looking to achieve? And two is, what are they scared of?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you have clarity on those two things, you can choose how you look to be able to communicate with them. And you are going to find that people in the 25 to 40-year age bracket right now have different goals and fears than people who are 20 years their senior. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if I listen to advice that my parents give to my siblings about how they should prepare for their financial future, I think it's straight up stupid. Like, it just
Mm-hmm.
doesn't give consideration to the way that the modern constraints are at. But so you've got to be prepared to ask questions that show you understand the struggle that individual person is having.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking to older people, you're looking towards, what is their plans now that the kids have left home? What are they looking to be able to do to take advantage of the fact that their house is worth more than it ever has been what else could they do to be able to utilize that money? If I'm speaking to somebody who believes they've got 40, 50 years ahead of them at life,
Yeah.
it's, what are you planning to be able to do to control some of the significant costs that are existing in your life, so that what you can do is to maintain or build upon the lifestyle you've become accustomed to?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you're still asking curious questions about future,
Mm-hmm.
but you've got a slight bias to understand what they're thinking about in their midterm future. Then what you can do is you can ask about goals and risks
Mm-hmm.
towards that. Like the greatest risk that I think for our entire generation is that they are anti-home ownership, but they don't have a plan B. Like,
Yeah.
it's like
well, they do have a plan B, Phil. It's just not going well, which is crypto, right? that was the plan B, but it's not going the direction they hoped.
Right, and it isn't necessarily going to have, it does. It's Vegas, right? Like, we can have a plan B for Vegas, but is cost of living is cost of living, and it's going to cost something to live. So is housing has to play a part in that. And if it's going to be crypto, great, but tell me how crypto is going to fund your family's future and their education.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like, how's it going to manage your 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35 grand a month rising expenses?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And this is what we have to have the ability to be able to question with confidence and empathy is, where are you going? Why does that matter? And what are the risks?
Yeah, it's so interesting to hear you say that, because my folks who live in the same town as I do are selling their property. And one of the biggest fears they had prior to listing their property, goes in the market the next couple of days, is they were so concerned about not having a place to move into. And it prevented them from putting the property in the market maybe 6 months ago, 12 months ago.
Yeah.
They couldn't fathom like renting for a little bit of period of time or being uncertain. So they were really uncomfortable with uncertainty. Whereas I bought a house last year, and I was not concerned at all about the uncertainty. Like, if we had to wait 6 months to be able to move into the house, or 4 or 5 months before moving in the house, and I wasn't concerned about where I was going to live. Like, I would have figured it out, is the point. And so I think what's interesting is that it's less about the generations. It's more about people's risks tolerance, their fears, because those could theoretically be irrespective of their age. You might come across someone who's in their early 60s who has the same risk tolerance as someone in their early 30s. Yep. Given their current financial situation. So here's my last question. This has been great. And guys, give it up for Phil in the chat here. This is, it's always fun to have these conversations, and him and I like to talk about this stuff, especially when it matters most, not when things are going good, but when things are becoming a little bit more challenging. I've been saying this throughout the entire call, Phil, which is inventory is this thing that we all wished for over the last 18 months. And every agent was saying, we got to have more inventory. Every blog post, we got to have more inventory. Every speaker on stage, we got to have more inventory. As soon as we get more inventory, the market's going to balance out. Well, it's sort of, we got what we wanted, but it wasn't what we thought it would be.
Right.
Which is, now you have sellers who are coming to market and they are unrealistic about their price. because their brain kind of got frozen in the 2021 market, and they have yet to sort of reattach to reality. So the guy who lives on the street from me is a good example of this. It's unlikely he's watching this podcast, but I'd say to his face, even if he was here, which is he listed his property for $1.3 million. His agent and him are decided to sort of have a collective, just delusion. They were just like, we're going to list this property for 1.3 million. He bought it for 900,000 2 years ago. All right. We don't live in a market that's that hot. And so I know a lot of people who are watching right now who are now, their phone's starting to ring. Hey, Jason, I want to list my property. Hey, Lisa, I want to list my property. The conversations they're having now are the consumer is stuck in the past. They're still kind of adding the pandemic premium to the home price. Knowing that the cost of holding on to a listing for a long period of time is really detrimental to a business. It's bad for the client experience. It's bad for the reputation of the agent. There's significant cost, support. How might you go about having a realistic pricing conversation with unrealistic sellers?
Okay. Firstly, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is it to you that you sell this home?
It's a 10, absolutely.
And how important is it to you that you sell it quickly?
It's important. It's a 7 out of 10.
Okay. And do you think it's getting more valuable or less valuable in this current market conditions as each day goes by?
I can see the prices are slowing down, right? I can see the houses are moving. So I think I don't know if it's going up or down. But I know things are starting to slow a bit.
Okay. So do we want to bring it to market at a good price, get good attention, maybe get 2, 3, 4 people that are interested in being able to move forward with it? Or do we want to overinflate a price, shoot for the stars, and potentially run the risk of walking into a price adjustment, price alignment, and then all the negative PR that comes at that in weeks or months on from now? Like which game do you want to play?
Well, all we need is one buyer, Phil, right? So I feel like I don't really care if I get a lot of offers, but we just need one buyer to pay this price.
Okay. And what do you think is going to happen if we put an excessive marketing price on this in the first instance? That means that one buyer doesn't show up at all.
Why do you think my price is excessive?
I haven't even given a price yet. I'm just trying to think about a game plan for pricing.
Mm-hmm. Well, I just feel like the home is worth $1.3 million.
Okay. Based on what?
Well, I think, I made some improvements to the property. I sealed the driveway. I built out a basement. I did some landscaping.
Yeah.
I put some money into the home.
Okay. How much?
I don't know, $30,000.
Okay. And how much do you pay for it?
I paid $900,000 for it.
Okay. So it owes you $930 plus expenses of transaction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what do you want to do next?
Well, we're moving back home. We're moving to Florida. That's where we're from, and gonna move closer to family. So we're just we want to get as much for this property because prices in Florida are expensive too.
Okay. And when do you want to be in Florida by?
We want to be by the fall.
Okay. So it's important that we get this sold quickly.
Yeah. Just for the right price. Absolutely. And, we want best case scenario, we want to be in Florida by the early fall.
And what's the bottom line number? Like if we're to play this bottom line, where's there a price point that you'd seriously look at it and think about like that could still make it worth it for you to go live your Florida dream?
Yeah. Okay. So let's pause there for a second. They have their top line number.
Yep.
Right. Because they've given it to you. And again, I'm speaking from experience talking to sellers. They all have a number in their mind, what they think their property's worth.
Yep.
And we know as agents, is that we know that number is almost always going to be a little bit higher than what their home is probably worth. Now, some are realistic. Some went to Zillow to check it out, and it's actually somewhat accurate. Some are, I just want to get, I've been in the house for 15 years. It's high enough.
Mm.
I have never heard of an agent during a listing consultation ask the seller what their lowest number is. So let's just zoom in on that for 1 second. What are you trying to do with that question?
I'm trying to help you move to Tampa, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to help you move to Tampa. I'm trying to help you get the best price for your home to get you moved on in your life the way you want to. And I want to understand the parameters.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you tell me that like anything north of 1.15, I can move forward with some confidence knowing this move was a good move.
Mm-hmm.
So I can now go, right, well, let's game plan this. You want 1.3, you take 1.15. You wanted me to list it for 1.3. I think that's a bad idea. Here's the game plan.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to bring this to market at 1.2.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to hit it hard. We're going to do this. 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 We're going to get as many people through the door. And I tell you who's going to decide what this home's worth. The market's going to decide, because
Mm-hmm.
the market always decides. But if we market it there and we do our job right, and the market decides it's worth the 1.3, then what we're going to do is we're going to get into an offers overs scenario. And the market decides it's worth in and around the 1.2 figure, and we get a 1.175 offer. Well, guess what? We all save face and everybody won, and that you get to be able to move to Tampa knowing that you got the most you could for your property. But the risk of us coming in at 1.3 is we miss all of that noise. We miss the moment. We take it off the market. We bring it back in 6 months' time, and now we're talking about 995.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to decide which game we want to play.
Yeah. The reason I'm smiling is when are we as humans maybe the most irrational or unreasonable or so disconnected from logic, Phil? Like, as human beings, when are we the most irrational people?
Either when we're drunk or when we are, feeling under pressure at a pinch.
Okay. I have a different answer.
Go ahead.
This one's more philosophical, but it's when we fall in love.
Oh, sure.
Right.
Sure.
Right. So when we fall in love, we become nothing. We will take every possible issue and justify it because we're in love.
Yeah, I believe that.
And so you can't get a buyer to fall in love with the property until they walk through the door. And so what's so interesting about this baseline, this idea of a range versus a fixed price, is as you're talking through that, what immediately came to my mind here is we want someone to fall in love with this property. And if we price it at this mark, at the top end of the market, we are so less likely to get someone to walk in the door, fall in love with your beautiful house, and make an irrational offer, right? An offer above what we're marked, because they could not bear to be without this property. And I know that to be true. When we bought this house, we didn't even get to see it. My wife fell in love with it. I didn't have the same feelings, but she did. And guess who won?
You fell in love with her, so that's how this works. Yeah,
it wasn't transferable in this case, but yes, it was. That was sort of how it works, right? But it's a really interesting point, which when you talk about establishing a baseline, what you're really saying is our ability to get people in the door is step one in this process. If we can't do that, then we got no shot at selling this property for a price that you'd be really happy with. And I think that disclaimer of, at the end of the day, to your point, the market is going to dictate what this house is worth, because the market is going to dictate what someone's willing to pay for it. And if we don't price it the right way, we're not even going to get a shot. So it's almost like when I'm workshopping this with you right now live, Phil, but it feels like, and tell me if I got this right or what I got wrong here. It feels like we have to make overpricing your property the expensive decision versus the no risk decision, because consumers feel there's no risk in me overpricing it. If it's over the market, we'll come down in price. It feels like we got to make that somewhat risky, so they're at least open to a more reasonable market-based price on our experience.
Let's just make this even simpler. Is we've just come out of a market where your job was to sell somebody's home.
Mm-hmm.
Today's market, you have to market somebody's home. So 6 months ago, we were selling, right? let's just get this out there, get the thing done, find somebody who's ready to be able to transact on this. Today, your job is to be back to being that brilliant marketeer of getting as many eyeballs around this, of being able to actually, find the right people, position the pricing so it's attractive. Like, you're back to being a marketeer again, as opposed to somebody who can hustle and drive those sales results out. And I think if you can get the conversation with the seller to the fact that it's you and them chasing best possible price, you and them finding the right kind of buyer, the conversations can be really honest, open, and transparent. If you're locked in this, well, I think it's worth, and 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 let me prove you wrong, it's gonna be an ugly matter of weeks and months, because you're not going to build the reputation that you're looking for if you're trying to prove who was more right on the value of the home.
Yeah.
You don't ever get to decide the value of a home. Market decides.
It's maybe the most important thing that you've said this entire hour that we've been together here, because I actually believe that the amount of time agents are going to waste and the amount of resources they have to dedicate to supporting and promoting and advertising and marketing and servicing overpriced listings is one of the easiest and fastest ways to kill your profitability. Your ability to service customers, support those customers, even if you do end up closing, they're unhappy. So it feels like this moment of truth that getting this pricing conversation right and getting it dialed in and calibrating it for the market that we're in and the market that we're about to be in is so mission critical to the long-term success and reputation of your business. Phil, we went over the hour here, my friend. This has been absolutely amazing. 2 questions for you. First one is, where is the best place that people can stay connected to Phil M. Jones?
Best place for me as a human is probably at Phil M. Jones UK on Instagram. And if you want to learn more about what's going on in my world, philmjones.com is a reasonable place to stop and see what's going on.
And we have to plug the book here, Phil, because now we have over 1,000 reviews. I'm not sure how many reviews we have on Audible, probably more. And we have now tens of thousands of agents across the country who've read it. Every single week, people send me a DM saying how much they love the book. We wrote the book now, it's a little over 3 years ago, give or take. Where can people find the book that we wrote that is now becoming, I think, more important than ever to use the tool in this market?
I mean, anywhere you can buy books, like, that's as good a job as we've done. So, exactly what to say for real estate has been a top 10 real estate book now for 3 years consecutively, continues to be main stable training resource, learning tool for new and experienced agents to get competent in conversation. What I would say to you today, though, is rerun the book through today's modern scenarios. Rework through your teams and say, how would that relate to blank? Take a situation like resetting expectations for an existing seller around pricing, and run through all the word choices and say, how would I use that to help with blank? And give yourself the gift of being able to wash yourself through the material in a new lens and take your team with you. Yeah, that's great. That's great advice. And if you want to listen to me stumble my way through reading the introduction, the forward to exactly what to say for real estate agents, you guys will enjoy that. You get to Phil in chapter 1. We also have. I got to tell everybody on this, because I know this is C-Buds on the line. Is it took Jimmy longer to read the intro in the audiobook recording than it did for me and Chris to produce the rest of the book. Yeah, it was the guy's like, can you please slow it down? Could you stop dropping your R's? I got a lot of that. But it was funny, and this is my advice to the book. The audiobook is an incredibly easy listen. You can listen to it 3 or 4 trips of listing presentations or driving your buyers around. But you should absolutely get the print edition. It is a tool. It's a tool that I actually, even though co-authored a book, I've been working with Phil for a long time, I still pull it up as a marketer to use. We have the field guide in there, which helps answer the most common and critical. It is really a tool in that sense, Phil. So if I'm writing an email, if I'm creating a Facebook ad, I got the book.
I got it on my desk. I'm looking through it. How might I actually approach this, turn the volume up on this a bit more? So download the audiobook to listen to Phil, and then pick up the hard copy so you can use it as a tool at your desk. Give it to every single salesperson who's actually picking up the phone, talking to prospects. This is something you can use as part of your regular sales coaching. Phil, as always, my friend, appreciate you jumping on. Thanks everybody. The recording will be posted on our YouTube channel. We'll send an email out with all the show notes and the recap. Have a great week, everyone. Thanks for tuning in today.
See you.